Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. This is Cesar Trabanco from the Global Chamber, and I welcome you to our last but not least Brazilian conversation this summer, where we're going to be covering a little bit more specific on manufacturing and chemicals, a little bit of logistics. So, as a way of a summary, our first session had a general economic outlook of the country. We covered a little bit on taxes, incentive, HR. And then the second session was very focused on cultural aspects. So we cover a bit of the language, a bit of how Brazil is different from the rest of Latin America, some do's and don'ts. And now for this session, we have a really great panel that's gonna be more deep dive into specific when it comes to manufacturing and chemical, and we're gonna end the session with an example of a foreigner has been over 30 years in Brazil, working and building his family, and so giving us an example of how to do it in Brazil, how to make it in Brazil. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator today, who is Fernando Penteado. And Fernando is an advisor member in Global Chamber Madrid and Spain, but he is from Brazil, has been working all over Latin America, and in the last couple of years, he's been based in Brazil. He's an expert in logistics, and he will talk a little bit about himself, about his expertise in the topic, but then have full control on the topic with Milton, Beatriz, and David. So, Fernando, thank you for your leadership, for accepting to be a moderator, and the floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you, Cesar. Thank you, everybody. I put my green shirt to be, let's say, Brazilian mood, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be with all of you this day. We are talking about a passionate topic for at least for me and for my colleagues on the panel, and we are talking about how to be, let's say, aligned with the requirements, aligned with the legislation and all the entities that we have in Brazil. It's as long as we are different than Latin America in certain way, we are also different in the way that we are doing business and our relationship with the entities. No, and I think that we can talk a little bit more in the next minutes. Just to give you, let's say, in a nutshell, what's my experience? I'm Brazilian. I've been living in São Paulo for a long time. Started my career in Avon Cosmetics, working there for more than 10 years. Cosmetics is a very, let's say, in terms of Brazil, not the most regulated one, but one of the very important regulated markets that you have in our loved country. And I have experience with working in several Latin American countries. I worked for years for Belcorp in Peru. Then I moved to Colombia, working with Grupo Éxito, the controllers of Grupo Pão de Açúcar in Brazil. For those ones that are in Brazil, they know the supermarket chain, but also in Colombia, it's a very important one. All of this experience in Latin America, working with logistics, supply chain, in charge of the end-to-end logistics, managing warehouses, distribution, transport. The time in retail, for example, was responsible for the whole distribution for the group. We are talking about more than 21 distribution centers and more than 300,000 square meters of warehouses to serve, serving more than 2,000 stores. Then yes, as let's say as a expat, I took the decision to move into Spain. So this is where I've been for the last 7 years. Happily here with start with my Colombian, Peruvian Spanish. So everything that I learned in the beginning in my Spanish school in Brazil works a lot here, because there's as of Latin America, there's a different Spanish that we talk here in Madrid. And during this period, more than 7 years, I was doing several different types of business. I was working in companies, working for pharmaceutical companies for several years. Also worked for a home appliances manufacturing with that's having the headquarters here in Spain. It's called Teca Group. This is one of the let's say more is knowing more for the sponsorship of the Real Madrid, those ones that are very fans of sport. You know that the old ones, the purple and white ones are with the Teca brand. So I was there working as vice president of supply chain for 2 years, working with Siemens Consulting for a couple of years too here in Spain. And last 10 months, I'm in charge of the global logistics areas for Galderma. Galderma is a Swiss company that having business in all different countries, including Brazil, with the brands that I think that most of you know. That Cetaphil is the most known brand for the company. And I was happily there developing my job, coordinating the whole global logistics. So that's in a nutshell my experience. And I can say, let's say, when you talk about Brazil and all the conversations we have about Brazil, uh, there's always a mix, no? It's like is a mix between it's a very big market, it's a very interesting market, it's a very important market for the companies. Several companies that have worked in the past decided to move in to open operations in Brazil. Like for example, Belcorp, there's a Peruvian one, decided to start doing business in Brazil. And there's the concerns about the fiscal, the taxes, the legislation. And Beatriz, Milton will talk about regulation too, but it's something that always came to to our minds when we talk about Brazil. But I also would like to make, let's say, the comments that uh, the especially the people, not talking about the people, no, we are Brazilians are let's say very open to business, very open to relationships. This is very important when you talk about business worldwide. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to doing business in Brazil. Despite the challenges, I think in my experience, I having leading operations in different countries, like in India, in China, here in Europe. I believe that all regions has their the circumstances and the situations. And this important point is that how can we mapping all these situations, all these let's say these gaps, these combs that came with all business. We have the pros and cons, and the how can we measure those into the scale and make it in favor of us, no? And then my experience says working with several different companies, also having my business. I'm operating for some time with important export from Brazil, and I have very positive experiences. Also, it's true, some challenges in customs and broker, some challenges with Visa, and so on and so forth. And maybe to let's say to invite our my colleagues on this discussion to the table, no? And I asked Beatriz and Milton, no, looking at the perspectives you have. You also have a lot of story, you have a lot of experience, expertise in the Brazilian markets. What's the most critical, this regulatory hurdles that we see in Brazil, for foreign companies when you're looking at entering Brazil, especially talking about chemical companies, pharmaceutical? I'm working for a pharmaceutical company right now. I'm aware about several points or challenges we have, but in your opinion, how is open, or how is making business in this market from a regulatory point of view? And for the people that don't know Brazil, if you can compare with different regions like America, like Europe, what are the main comparisons we can do of these two different markets? So maybe Beatrice first, then Milton
Beatriz
can
first.
continue.
Ladies first,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Cesar, for the introductions and for let us the opportunity to talk in this forum. First, let all be in the same page on what we are going to refer as a chemical industry, because all physical matters are composed by have chemicals as part of the composition. So uh, at least my input, and I guess also Milton's, are more defined to industries commercializing chemical formulated consumer goods, products that may involve several sectors as pharmaceutical, cosmetics, pesticide, home care, sanitary, and formulated food-related products. No, there are other industries, there are other sectors that may not fit completely with our answer. But to the question of what are the main regulatory hurdles to enter to Brazil, I will say first, wrong assumptions. Not understanding the Latin American geopolitics and the Brazil diversity internally, no? That was mentioned in the previous sessions. Just in Latin America, we have 23 countries, more difference than similarities among them, and we don't have a single community as in Europe. We have several alliances occurring simultaneously, and all these dynamics uh, help to understand the complexities and understanding that the level of detail will help us to establish the right strategy. Additionally, Brazil has several regions with different behaviors, needs, and different commercial opportunities to explore. We cannot say that everything is the same across all Brazil. So associated with that is oversimplification, not having clarity on the complexities of the rules and the implications associated with those complexities. So it's important to really understand the principles and intention behind the rules. For example, the bureaucracy to warrant everyone pay the taxes and establish fees, warrant quality and human safety. There are a lot of rules associated with that. Local production protection and environmental protection and more. There are a lot of rules associated with these themes. Just because you manage to enter other markets, for example, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Chile, you are ready to enter to Brazil. You need to understand the rules. The other hurdle is those that have short-term view. Short-term view is not a real strategy. You need to really have a plan with the short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Substance of interest and Anvisa short-term reaction to them. Recently, we have an example with the stannous fluoride that is been in the market for years in toothpaste, but now is on the news with some potential concerns on safety. So the message here is that the companies should always be ready to defend their formulations because it may happen from today to tomorrow that you are having hurdles with one of your compounds. And navigating uncertainties. Brazil is part of the VUCA world. So uncertainties is part of the game. Do you want to say something on
Yeah,
this?
thank you. No, I think, Beatriz, thank you for this first comments. I think a lot of points to be taken into account in consideration, the dynamics and oversimplification. And I will ask Milton. Milton, I also have a long experience on this field. What your point of view and comparing with different markets like Europe. I mean, here in Europe, I'd say that's not as easy as we say, but it's
No.
like to having your point of view on that.
No, thank you, Fernando. And thank you, Cesar, Fernando, and Beatriz also for the introduction. So that's one thing over. When we think that it's easy there or here, it's because maybe you are just being simplistic, right? We're just saying like, oh, that it's always different, right? So I think one thing that it's good about, and I think Beatriz comment on that, is that we are regulated, right? There are some countries that we see some uncertainty, they're not well defined. So now we have well-established regulations. So it's defined, right? Anvisa is regulating for food, as Beatriz said, for chemicals in some point. We have other entities that are like have the oversight over it. So I think it's different from other countries that we don't have, or it's like a gray zone that we need to understand how it is, and some. So I think this is a one good point. I think from Europe and one big difference from Mariup is that, and I think it's changing, right? Anvisa is trying to be more and more in line with the other entities, right? Now it's part of the PICS, so it's getting more standardized. Let's see now, for example, for pharmaceuticals, Anvisa it's processing the dossiers for submission with the CTD, which is like a common dossier. So they're changing, but I think the main difference is like when you're talking about distribution and circulating the product, right? Brazil is a continental country, so when you're talking about Brazil, and sometimes I use this approach on my presentations, I just put countries inside of Brazil, no, for the audience have the dimension of Brazil. Like for example, UK is the size of São Paulo state. So I just put UK in there. The people say like, oh, really? So I think one challenge, and then one big difference from Europe, that you can circle the product really easy, and you have the agreements between countries. It's more well established. Even in Brazil, you have like a big difference when you are changing states. For example, when you're moving to São Paulo and transferring the goods to another state, for example, you have different taxes, you have different approach, you have different authorities in there. When you talk about Anvisa is like the federal authority. The oversight is for Brazil itself, but in each state you have a different authority with a different understanding of the law. And in the cities, you have a different one from the state. So it's like the city sanitary agency. So when this brings more complexity, and it's different from more standardized approach, as I can see in Europe or United States, that you also have those entities, but I believe it's more harmonized. In Brazil, what I can feel is that sometimes, they see different and they have different approach. And I think when you have like good partners, I think this is something that they need to raise their hand and say like, hey, you need to take care of this your product could be classified as this or that one, or if you distribute it in this way, you might have some considerations or issues, or even showstoppers for your operation. So when you're talking about importation, when you're talking about distribution, I think this is one I think a big assessment, and on the consultancy that I work, that's something that we look for. We model this operation based on the company requirements. When you bring those strategies, you like outsource this part for the, I don't know, for the registration, because it's easy. You have someone that is oversighting into this. Distribution is another way. So I think it's to avoid those mistakes and those showstoppers on day to day. Partnering up with a good provider, a good consultancy, it's fundamental for the success in Brazil.
No, I believe we have a lot of funny or funny right now, but it was not funny. And at the moment it happens, I recall one of them that we are distributing cosmetics in through the Amazon River, and I can imagine how challenge it could be to keep the cold chain to the whole operation with those
Exactly.
boats. No,
And
yeah.
I have some stories, Fernando, about this. Even like some places that you are distributing a product that is like 2 to 8, so cold chain, and you have all the validations and all the configurations in there, and people are crossing the river with a canoe, with the product to be distributed to the hospital in there, because the patient is waiting. So it's really critical. and
Yeah.
they transfer. So how can you model this kind of operation? You know, it's only in Brazil probably, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And but let's say to make it more real to the colleagues that are watching today and they want to, let's say, to join the Brazil market, they want to jump on this adventure. We are not just Rio and São Paulo and Amazonas, no. Uh, if you can summarize very quick, what is the bottlenecks that those companies underestimate when they join to Brazil? And if you can get, let's say, three tips, the three must-dos that any company should do in Brazil to open this new business. And then Beatriz will help us with more the regulatory part. But I want to listen for you, Milt. What are the three main points or these points that should be taken into consideration for the colleagues that wants to join Brazil as a market?
No, and it's a great question. I think, you know, the sometimes, you know, companies underestimate, you know, what you need and what is the what's the targets in Brazil. No, so I think and the requirements. So I think, you know, like one I think partnering up with a good consultancy or a good company that can, you know, understand fully end to end, and this is difficult, right? Sometimes they partner up with an office of law, you know, so a lawyer that knows how to do this part of the job or this part of the situation. Sometimes they partner up with a consultancy that is only for quality or only for regulatory. I can see so many companies, and I can say from the startup business, you know, biotech and pharma, when they come to Brazil, the first hire is the GM, is the general manager. The second one is the regulatory affairs director, so they can start the registration. And I can say that for me, the best approach would be to first model your full operation before you come to the country, because there is so many, and I can say sometimes I say like the menu is so diverse, right? You can purchase a shell company in Brazil. You can like host with your registration or host your license with another company. You can out license your product. So there are so many ways, and usually companies are going by the book. Okay, I've done this in Europe. I've done this in China. I did this in other countries. So I will do the same in Brazil. So, you know, I think partnering up with a strategist first to model your operation before you start the expansion to Brazil. I think it's the first one. I think the second one will be after that. Understand, you know, the moment of the company, you know, how the company can, you know, approach Brazil, and what they will get from there, right? If they want to distribute right away, there is one way to do it. So the company needs to be, you know, I think frank about it and say, hey, we want to distribute right away. So how can I bring my product to the market? No, day one. No, my company is more conservative. We want to establish first, understand the market. We have a good budget to do that, because that's the point three they are going to say, right? Understand your budget and understand your limitations sometimes, right? But back into the second one, I think when you do this assessment and you are on the table, you know, bringing this those views and understanding, you know, your approach and understanding what you need from there. I think it brings you to the third one, which is basically your budget, right? How much money actually do you have to invest on this? Or if you don't have any like budget increase or any budget to start up, okay, so you go to licensing, you know. So to be real on the current situation of the company, how you're going to expand, how you're going to approach, and, you know, find a good consultancy or find a good partner locally that can provide you a vision end to end, so you can, you know, insert your company, insert your real let's say a reality, you know, on this as I'm calling this model that you are approaching. So, you know, I think this is those three points that I'd like to highlight. I don't know,
Yeah.
Beatriz, if you like to comment on the regulatory or even on this point too.
Well, I will add that it's very important what Milton say, and also Fernando. This is a regulated country, and the regulations are not only for pharmaceuticals. This old mindset that GMPs no good manufacturing practices. It's only for pharmaceutical. It's not going to work here in Brazil. We have good manufacturing practices norms for even for home care products and saneantes as are called here, named here the domisanitaries category. So it's very important to understand that good manufacturing practices is for all industries. Okay, this what I will add.
And Beatriz, on the other side, we have all we talk about this is a regulated market, no? But when you start to talking about the soup of letters like Anvisa, Anmat, Invima, Copedis, we have a lot of regulatory agencies on those markets, no? What are the let's say most common mistakes, and for the colleagues that wants to join Brazil, what should be avoided when we're talking or we're dealing with those authorities? What are your expertise on this field you can share with us?
Okay, in addition to this whole mindset that I mentioned, not being ready for the frequent regulatory changes. As I say, Brazil is not isolated. Brazil is part of Latin America. There are several alliances. Many of these alliances have their own regulatory, agreements on good manufacturing practices. And Anvisa, which is in Brazil, is a big influencer, but there are other regulatory agencies that have a lot of influence. So if you are audited by Anvisa, this doesn't mean that your company is also need to be ready to be audited all the time also by ANMAT, by INVIMA, by the others agencies if you are sending product to those countries. Being part of Mercosur will facilitate that readiness for the members of that alliance. But if you are in the Pacific Alliance, there are other rules that are there, and you need to the companies need to be always ready to be audited by these agencies. The other error mistake is not understanding the go-to-market rules, because it's not only Anvisa, it's also all the taxes rules, as was mentioned by Marcelo Reis in the first session of this series. It's MAPA for agriculture and food related, are all the external commerce rules. The INPI is for intellectual property. You want to protect your products also in Brazil, no? So you need to follow INPI rules. Here in Brazil, we have a biodiversity law. It's associated with all the natural ingredients, and we need to follow. Not all the countries have biodiversity laws. Here in Brazil also we have franchise law to protect that business model, no franchise business model. So this doesn't exist in the US, for example. So those are just examples that you need to understand really the go-to-market details. Brazil is the only country in Latin America that doesn't speak Spanish, and there are labeling rules that all the packaging information and instructions should be legible and available in Brazilian Portuguese. In addition, you need to display the instructions in the original language for Anvisa. So many rules to follow, but you need to understand the intent, as I say before. Those
Well,
are the main
we are
mistakes.
Brazilian, our fluent in Portugal. So we think that we speak Spanish, right? Yeah, no, very interesting. Thank you for your insights, and maybe very let's say, summarize here, we talk about the dynamics of the market, to understanding how the legislation evolves, as you mentioned, no, Beatriz, the oversimplification, and all these, let's say, these regulatory changes that we see on the past decade, past years, no. But yeah, maybe just looking at a real case, no, and I'd like to invite David for the conversation, because it's very interesting to understand a company that's established, and as far as I understand, David, more than 40 years the company has a story in Brazil, and you as to say that the people that's connected, David speak Portuguese, a Brazilian Portuguese, better than even than me that outside Brazil for a while, no. So maybe, David, if you can talk a little bit about this, what's the experience of the company you see in this 40 years, the changes that you see, and your personal experience in Brazil doing business. No, if you can share some of you and some tips of those experience in Brazil, would be great.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the invitation and to have the opportunity to use this forum as a bullhorn to talk about Brazil. I moved to Brazil almost 40 years ago. I was getting my master's degree at Thunderbird in Arizona, which is now part of Arizona State University, and I had the opportunity to be transferred to Brazil. It was my first job, and at the time, I didn't really know much about Brazil, but I thought it would be great experience for a couple of years. And fast forward, here I am for 40 years, almost 40 years. And the fact is that I'm very grateful. Everything that I have, it's due to Brazil. My home, my family, like I like to say, the three best things in the world are my wife and my two children. My wife is Brazilian. My two children were born here. The community that I have developed, the friendships, and the business. When we first came here almost 40 years ago, it was just starting out. And fast forward, now we're a medium to large size company. We've seen double-digit growth during this whole 40 years. And the fact of the matter is that due to this growth, I've been able to convince my corporate office to allow me to continue to stay here. I never wanted to leave. There were opportunities not only to grow within Brazil, but within South America and Sub-Saharan Africa.
It's very impressive, and I have more experience in Brazil than myself, because I lived in Brazil almost 10 years ago. So it's a very interesting point of view, no. And if you're looking, I mean, if you're both, let's say, from college, university, information in the US, and then your experience in Brazil, how can you, let's say, you compare those cultures? Do you have any challenge on your personal or professional story that, I don't know, business etiquette, the way that we're doing business in Brazil, some tips for those ones that just arrived in Brazil, in São Paulo or in Rio or in Amazonas next couple of weeks? Can you share some experiences that you have?
Of course, there's a lot of differences between the United States and Brazil and within Brazil, but Brazilians are very welcoming. Probably one of the most welcoming people I've ever met, and I've had the opportunity to travel not only throughout South America, Central America, Europe, and Africa, but while the differences exist, and you have to understand the differences, I've never felt the need to actually be a Brazilian, in the sense that if I respect their differences, they'll respect my differences in double. So it's a very diverse country, and very respectful of different people and their attitudes and their political views and their economic views and their social views. And so in that sense, I've never had any problem. With regard to business, that's a two-part question. Here in Brazil, we have a formal economy and we have an informal economy, and a company such as ours, and we've been 100% dedicated to the formal economy, and so the business values, I would say, are very similar. Obviously, the business values in the informal economy are quite different. But as the years have gone by, I see how this formal economy is becoming stronger and stronger, and the informal economy is becoming weaker and weaker. And so the opportunities for our company to continue to grow into the short term, medium term, and long term are tremendous, not only because the fact that the formal economy will automatically continue to grow, but it will grow exponentially as we bring the informal economy into the into our business reality.
No, it's very interesting to mention, and you know that we have several pieces of legislation in U.S. regarding to compliance, the FCPA rules, and so on and so forth. Do you see, I mean, being in Brazil, any tips or any comments that you see when you try to match those American or way of business with the Brazilian way of business in a positive way, or something that you say, hey, we need to avoid when you start working with Brazil? Any lessons learned that you have into this period?
Of course. Well, I don't want to be repetitive because Milton did a wonderful job of talking about the do's and don'ts. And so the only thing that I would add is, well, we talked about, in real estate, everybody says the three most important things are location, location, location. Well, the three most important things here are structure, structure, structure. So definitely structure yourself, just like Milton mentioned. And then also, you're in logistics, Fernando, and Milton also mentioned that, just the logistics in this country, over promising has been maybe a problem that I had in the past, in the sense that our corporate offices within the continental United States, they would be able to service our distributors in 48 hours anywhere in continental United States. Well, if you go into the Amazons or the Northeast, or you don't even have to go that far, Mato Grosso, Rio Grande do Sul, it'll take a lot longer to get to those markets and get your product to those markets and service those markets. And while in the past, those end users and those clients may have been patient with regard to receiving that support, as the economy is evolving, their patience is actually slowing down, in the sense that that means you have to step up your game and more and more, and that means you have to continue to invest in your structure, be it logistics or sales or technical support. And so Brazil offers tremendous opportunities, but it's not for the weak-hearted, as they like to say. And so you do have to stay on top and never rest on your laurels. Continue to invest, continue to go to service the whole four corners of Brazil. And so, as Beatriz mentioned, there are big differences. But as we continue to evolve, the integration within Brazil continues, and the integration within Latin America continues. One of the things that has attracted us so much to Brazil is not only the strong domestic market, but the strong South American market. Brazil borders every country in South America but Ecuador and Chile. And we do have our trade agreements, Mercosur being one of them. And we do. I just came back from Peru, and while we don't have a formal trade agreement with them, we are integrating with them. They built some a new port right outside of Lima, and we're building a rail to reach that port. And so that'll help with logistics. That'll help Brazilian product to get to the Pacific market. And I talked about Sub-Saharan Africa also. Freight is becoming logistics is becoming much more efficient to that part of the world. So I do believe that we're sitting on in Brazil here. We're sitting on tremendous opportunities for the future. I wish I was 30 some years younger to be able to see it.
No, yeah, very, 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 very interesting. And I've since the first time we talked, and I love the way that we talk with Brazil about Brazil and the passion about our country and how to make business in Brazil. And Beatriz also is a foreigner that live in Brazil, so it's a very, very interesting mix, no? So before jump to the Q&A session, maybe to ask to, let's say, all of you, maybe start with Beatriz, then Milton, and finally with David. For those foreign companies that looking in Brazil but they're still hesitant to jump to this market or to start into Brazil, what do you say? What will be your let's say last message to those companies? What they are should keeping looking at Brazil as an opportunity?
Well, definitely, Brazil is a big market, so you cannot just ignore that. And as every good opportunity, you need to do the work, your homework to understand what are the requirements, what you need to be able to win in that market. And one of the things is partnership, as mentioned, no? And partnership with locals, specialized, that understand those details and implications. This way you won't have surprises. You will have a good member of your team locally to be able to help you to navigate the requirements, the complexities, and the details.
Partnership
That's
is
very
fundamental.
important.
Yeah, and absolutely, Beatriz. Milton, your final comments.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I I agree with Beatriz, and partner up and actually don't need to say like, oh, partner up with me, oh, partner up with Beatriz, use me, no, like this, but you just check who can, access, some partners, in the market, check and see if they are saying the same thing, right? If they say the same thing, something is different or, it's too easy, as David was saying, you can, go deeper and understand better. So, and I think when you say about partnering up, is partnering up with someone that can go end to end, and have a good track record, to support you, because sometimes there are some companies that they just their expertise just in one slot. Like they're just expert in regulatory, they're just expert in taxes, they're just expert in like opening the companies for you, but they're not expert on modeling your operation. They're not expert on giving end-to-end solutions to you. So I think partnering up with the right partner, access many partners to see if they are saying the same thing, and if they have the same information, or if they have different information, why someone have a different information. They have a different structure, or they understand different the market, what's happening there. So I think basically do your homework, do your assessment, and access as many companies as you can, and basically have your game on.
Great. David, your
Well, honestly,
motivation
there's
for
two
all of
ways.
us.
Yeah. There's two ways to see Brazil. You can see it glass half full or half empty. I'm an optimist, and I'm an optimist for many reasons. And your three-part series, especially the first two parts, talk quite a bit about all the opportunities. So I don't want to get into that. But I would say that Brazil is evolving quite a bit, and a lot of the hurdles that we see and we've talked about in this three-part series are remnants of a past, and a remnants of a process of political and economic evolution that occurred in the 20th century. And I don't want to get into all that, but I would say that because of that, a lot of the hurdles are difficult. And as Brazil evolves, we're seeing a lot of reforms. We're seeing human resource labor reforms. We're seeing tax reforms. We're seeing a lot of integration with other regulatory laws and other trade blocks. And so I do see simplification as we move forward. As Brazil, like I said, in the past, Brazil needed to protect its domestic industries, infant industry arguments, and so they became highly insulated. In some ways, that helped Brazil to develop, and in some ways it's beneficial at this point because as we go into all these trade wars that's occurring all over the United States, Brazil's well positioned to take advantage of these trade wars because we're not so dependent on certain certain countries like other countries are. We have developed our industries, and now I think Brazil is beginning to open up, and I think that we'll be seeing a lot of reforms in the future.
No, absolutely, and thank you for all of you for the comments. And just to finish by my part, I've been out of Brazil for around 20 years, and I started my career there in Brazil, and I see how the environment evolves. In conversations with my colleagues here in the company, they usually say sometimes that Anvisa is more royal than the king, because Anvisa is very strict, but that's a good way, because they're more restricted than other agencies, and they are more concerning about the health, more concerning about the quality of the products. So those are the things that we need to take into consideration. I mean, Brazil, it's not the country of the future anymore. We are living in Brazil. You heard this phrase every time, but I think that's a bright future, and for all of the companies that want to join Brazil, I think it's a good opportunity to get in support with, as Beatriz Milton mentioned, to people that knows the market and they can support you in this journey, and to, as David said, to have a bright career, more than 40 years, and thinking of growing the business in Brazil. So yeah, thank you so much, and maybe let's jump to the questions. Thank you, Yuka. I know, Cesar, any questions on the chat? Or
I
have a
didn't see any
question.
questions, but Anita has one. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Anita.
Yeah, it's actually for Beatriz because you mentioned franchises, and I know that you have experience looking into franchises. And because you also mentioned that from state to state, it's almost like going to another country. Does that make it very, very difficult for franchises to open in Brazil? Because if they can't go into the whole country, then it would make it harder for them?
Yeah, the fact that you have difference in the states doesn't mean that you cannot get the whole country. You can. You can do it in stages, no? Start in an state and then expand. And actually, it's the way the regular operations start, no? They start in one place and they start the expansion. But the problem that I see is this oversimplification. Many of the franchise, I explore a franchise from Canada that is already in the whole US, in Saudi Arabia, in Chile, in Mexico, in New Zealand. And when they start seeing that we have a franchise law here, so they cannot use the same contract that they have in other countries here in Brazil because we have a law regulating that. The other thing is that the owner of the product, that usually is the main franchisor, they cannot delegate here in Brazil the franchisor responsibilities in the franchisee. That does not allow it. The franchisee will have their taxes and responsibilities and the entity registration in the country different than the franchisor. The franchisor also need to have a company here in Brazil by law.
with a
the
legal responsible.
the royalties payments need to follow the rules of the external commerce law in Brazil. The rules are different. So it's not that it's not possible. You need to really understand how you will operate here and you will have success. It's a big market. Okay.
If I can sum to that, and I was talking over you, Beatrice, so sorry about that. Like for example, sometimes it's not clear that you need to be someone legally responsible here in Brazil, like a legal responsible, and if you have like a under the regulation, a technical responsible, depending on the company too. Like so, sometimes not created. So talking about a little bit of strategy just to input. For example, a company that is bringing a franchise here and they open, a regular company, business as usual. Sometimes they insert, the affiliates inside a master, company because you can include the affiliate in there. But they don't know sometimes that if something happened with the affiliate companies, it impacts the license on the major one that is here. So one advice that usually I give to people that are going multiple states, and because each state and each location you need a different address and a different you need the CNPJ number, tax ID number in there. It's say like, okay, don't go and input everything on the same company. Open a different one in each state or in a different location because they go independent. It's more work, but you don't affect with someone is doing something wrong or something happening in the company or anything happens in there. And also just one food for thought on this when you're talking about modeling the operation, and understanding how it works on the scenario here in Brazil.
Excellent.
I do have a question, Fernando, and I think everyone here in the panel can probably answer that. We were talking about manufacturing chemicals, specifically cosmetics, pharma. When it comes to foreign companies going to Brazil, is that to serve only the local market, or is Brazil positioning itself to serve the whole South America or even beyond? What's the normal um, happening there with that?
To enter in Brazil through Mercosur, you will have opened the door for all Mercosur countries. So it could be very strategic in that sense.
Yeah. No, and I would say, for example, my experience in the companies I've worked for, Brazil can be usually a center of excellence for manufacturing several different products for the regions. Because we can, for example, my experience if cosmetics companies, for example, we are serving Latin America countries directly from Brazil, and especially the soft cone, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. Maybe Chile is a little bit more challenging because of the logistics, but especially the near soft cone are more. Let's say Brazil can be used as a point of consolidation for these regions. But I have experienced exporting products from Brazil to Australia, for example, to Dominican Republic, to US. So there's common in the market to do this kind of operation.
And regarding cosmetics, in Latin America, we have GMP norms for cosmetics from a long time ago. In the US, this is starting with the MOCRA legislation. It's just starting. So we can take advantage of that experience.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Brazil, it's a well regulated, as we know, and just a takeover from the pharma business, we just need to take care, a little bit because when you are exporting to Latin American countries, different rules apply. For example, in Namat in Argentina, you need to have a quality control lab to test every single product. Here in Brazil, we have exemptions for biologics, for like rare disease, and a different regulation on that. When you're talking about coffee, and in Mexico, or you're talking about MSP in Uruguay. There are different regulation and different approach to that. Like one thing in common is that you always need to have someone legally responsible here in Latin America and a technical responsible too. I think this is I think a regular standard, but regulations need to be adapted, and doesn't mean that Brazil, and I think this is a wrong assumption. Oh, Brazil have a high standard here in Latin America, so will be the standard for every single country. No, every single country has their own law, their own authority, and we need to navigate and know how to navigate on those countries.
And I think that David mentioned that Brazil is a spearhead for the company for other regions, right, David?
Yes, we have operations in every country in South America but Venezuela. And all based, developed from Brazil. So yes, I agree 100% with Milton. You have to understand the different countries, but it's doable. I'm an example of that success.
You are definitely an example. Thank you all. I see. Oh, Mohammed.
Mohammed is with, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for very informative webinar. I'm so sorry to miss the first and the second one. I'm not sure if you have touched on this, but is there any governmental program for supporting Brazilian producers to organize outside of Brasilia? I am from Iraq, and Brasilia have a very connected how you say market in Iraq. Started in the late 80s with automotive sector, and until now we have in livestock and how you say food from Brazil, and it's famous from its quality and production. Is there any governmental support for Brazilian producers to get organized and support and introduction outside in areas like Middle East or something? Thank you.
Mohammed, just one question. What you mean, like any incentives for a Brazilian company to establish or to export or something like this?
Yes, yes. For example, I am living in Turkey. Turkey is supporting their producers to be organized outside of Turkey, and we will give them support for introduction. Or is there some kind of initiatives like that in Brazil? Thank you.
Yes, there's a lot of initiatives, including, I see that Everaldo, it's on the call, and Everaldo is part of one board, in the Porto Seco Centro-Oeste in Goiás, and they have a lot of missions, for Brazilian companies to go abroad. I mentioned Everaldo because I know that he's been on those missions for China, for example, to open the markets. So there's a lot of incentives. It's just a matter, I think, on checking what's the sector, what's the industry, and what's exactly strategic to Brazil and the foreign country. But I know that there are a lot of incentives. It's just a matter of checking up, especially by sector. I will advise you to go by sector, because depending on the sector you have more and less. Depending on the sector you have already missions ongoing that you're going to visit the countries and make those agreements, right? Yes, for sure we do.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So thank you again, everyone. I think we need to just start wrapping up. But I want to first, Fernando, give you, I think you did an amazing job moderating. So I want to give you the final words before I wrap up. Fernando, your thoughts about Brazil, your thought about Spain, Brazil, or Europe, Brazil, anything you want to add?
No, thank you. I mean, just to let you know, I'm based in Madrid right now, and they have coverage all the Europe. So we are collaborating with Global Chamber in those two markets, and also I have experience in the whole Latin America. For me, it's a pleasure to be with the panelists. Guys, you're doing great. Thank you so much for your support. And that's it. I think that's Brazil is a market to take a look, definitely, and I think we are here to support. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Beatriz, Fernando, Milton, and David.
To all of you. Thank you.
It's been a great conversation, and thanks to all the panelists from the previous sessions. We're gonna do a summary. We're gonna send the whole package to everyone, because I think the 3 events went pretty well, and Brazil is a really important country that sometimes not getting the attention it probably needs to, and we got members working on Brazil doing a lot of stuff. Even one of our Argentinian members who's working on digital payment processing was telling me that they're helping to take pigs to Florida. So it's a lot going on there. And again, thanks everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to our next Brazil conversation for sure.
Muito obrigado.
Obrigado. Thank
Muito
you,
Obrigado a
guys.
obrigado.
vocês.
Obrigado, gente.
Tchau, tchau.
Tchau.
Bye
Tchau.
bye.